Jim, thank you for giving me. We saw an idea that things were perhaps beginning when all our comms went down about half an hour ago. All cell phones went out, and still it's patchy. But the sort of shelling began about half an hour ago, periodic rumbles in the distance. But now I've been able to see in front of me in the exposed plains there 4 or 5 shells landing in the last 10 minutes. It looks like a convoy of something is moving in the dust. A lot of motion towards the border down here, and we have now heard from Turkish President Erdogan that the operation is underway, which marks obviously a substantial change in the environment where I'm standing. The question we really have to ask is how extensive is what the Turkish military is planning. A map there that potentially had 18 miles of territory inside Syria demarked by President Erdogan, potentially is being seized as part of this operation. But that could potentially take months, maybe years to sustain. The question immediately is, around this town of Tal Abyad, I'm on the Turkish side of the border in a town called Akçakale. Tal Abyad is on the other side of the border by about 3 I'm standing, and the forces withdrew in the last 56 hours. So after that Sunday night phone call between President Donald Trump and President Erdogan, that town of Tal Abyad and possibly further down the border, we simply don't know at this point. We've seen movements of Turkish military hardware up and down the border as we drove in. But I have to tell you, in the last few hours, the atmosphere around here changed substantially, and now we are clearly seeing shelling beginning on that particular side of the border. The impact's quite clear from us to see from this rooftop.
Nick, it's the signal is choppy, and folks, so you understand at home, Nick is on the border between Turkey and Syria as this Turkish offensive begins there. Deliberate effort by Turkish forces, it seems, to scramble cell phone signals so as not to allow communication out. But Nick, if you could still hear me just very quickly, what is the situation with America's, until recently, allies on the ground there, the Kurdish forces who were fighting alongside U.S. forces against ISIS, who say they've been abandoned? What's their status?
Be in no doubt that certainly they are outnumbered, and the Turkish military, the second largest army in NATO, is significantly better equipped and better in numbers. So the fight only really has one conclusion. The issue, of course, for the Syrian Kurds, how long they choose to fight back. They are far more fueled, perhaps ideologically, in their desire to hold on to what they see as a long-term homeland for themselves, but there's been talk of a general call-up for all civilians to assist in resisting the Turkish, what they call, invasion here, and, the major, I think, concern for those who've watched, like myself, Syrian Kurds give hundreds, thousands, 10,000 possibly lives in the fight against ISIS with U.S. backing is exactly the resentment they will feel towards the West, towards their U.S. backers, if a NATO member, essentially with a green light, it seems, certainly in their minds, from the White House, begins an assault of this extent. We don't know how big it's going to be, but certainly it's now underway. Jim? Yeah.
Well, Nick Payton-Walsham there on the border for CNN as this Turkish offensive begins. We're going to continue to bring you updates there. There are difficult circumstances, of course. We're talking about aerial bombardment, artillery as well. And again, as Nick was saying there, an invasion okayed, it seemed, by the U.S. president.